release social security numbers. I didn't want anything deleted. They said, sir, what about social security? People long gone, but they're long gone, so I can't imagine. But I said, if you don't delete it, if you do delete it, we have people are going to say, why did you delete it? There's something in it. So we gave social security, we gave everything. And the rest is for you to look at, Peter. You're going to see whether or not you see anything. But we've given it. We're doing it with Dr. Martin Luther King, too. They're preparing all of that. They're going to release everything. And whoever else they want. I mean, you know, we have nothing. We really have nothing to hide. We shouldn't have. You know, when a lot of time goes by. But with the Kennedy files, in particular, they were going crazy on. I don't think there's anything that's earth-shattering, but you'll have to make that determination. In those, you know, it's 80,000, it's actually 88,000, and we have some additional things, as you know, come out today. And for that, you can go to the offices and you can see whatever you want to see. Everything is out there, totally open. The additional stuff is available later on today. You go over to the offices and you can have it immediately, and you'll make a determination.
And on something else, these Tren de Aragua guys, because of your executive order, they are designated as foreign terrorists.
Yeah.
If ISIS or Al-Qaeda foreign terrorists were operating here in the United States, cops would probably be shooting first and asking questions later. And so what is the difference between terrorists, between somebody like an ISIS or an Al-Qaeda operative versus a MS-13 or Tren de Aragua?
Well, these are people that focus on destroying people in their homes. They're not as international in that sense. They're a group of thugs. They come from Venezuela. They come from the prisons of Venezuela. They're very dangerous people, but they didn't look so dangerous when the guards took care of the situation from El Salvador. And I want to thank the president. He's a friend of mine. He's done a great job. But I just can't imagine that the Democrats are taking this issue where they want to have them back. You know, so now they have men playing in women's sports. They have transgender for everyone. They have open borders. They have all of their crazy policies that are, I think, 95-5, not 90-10, okay? And their new policy is, let's bring Tren de Aragua back into our country. Let's bring the worst, these are the worst gang members there are. They looked amazingly frail, though, by the way they were handled. It's very amazing. You know, they weren't, when they were in Colorado cutting the fingers off a man because he made a phone call to the police, they seemed a lot tougher then than they did when they were having their head shaved and they were in shackles. They're tough people, they're bad people. We don't want them in our country. We can't let a judge say that he wants him. You know, he didn't run for president. He didn't get much more than 80 million votes. And we just can't let that happen. It'd be so bad for our country. I won on the basis of getting criminals out of our country that were let in. It was called unforced error. They were let in by Biden, incompetently let in. And let in by the millions, actually. 21 million people, I believe it's 21 million. And that's not even including the gotaways, but these are rough people. We want them out of our country. And I won the election based at least partly on that, and that's a big part, yeah?
I don't know if you saw this. Tim Walz is now saying about Trump supporters, and forgive me, I'm just reading a quote from Tim Walz, I think I could kick most of their ass.
Oh boy, he'd be in trouble.
Is there any way to know?
Well, he's a loser, you know, I mean, the guy's a loser. He lost an election. He played a part. You know, usually a vice president doesn't play a part, they say. I think Tim played a part. I think he was so bad that he hurt her. But she hurt herself, and Joe hurt them both. They didn't have a great group, but I would probably put him at the bottom of the group.
Have you heard that Biden wants to get back involved for Democratic politicians, fundraising and campaigning against your policies?
I hope so. I hope so.
Mr. President, there are several families. Mr. President, there are families from some of the people. Abuela Nación is Pepe from Argentina. There are families from some of the people that were on those flights to El Salvador that claim that they're not criminals, they're not members of Tren de Aragua, of MS-13. What can you tell them, and what guarantees can you give them that everyone in those planes were actual criminals, terrorists, as you said?
Well, I was told that they went through a very strong vetting process, and that that will also be continuing in El Salvador. And if there's anything like that, we would certainly want to find out. But these were a bad group. This was a bad group, and they were in bad areas, and they were with a lot of other people that were absolutely killers, murderers, and people that were really bad, with the worst records you've ever seen. And but we will continue that process, absolutely. We don't want to make that kind of a mistake.
Is the U.S. planning to give up the position of NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, and if so, why?
NATO is something that I saved. NATO was gone until I came along. In fact, the previous Secretary General, very good man, both of them are good. The current man is fantastic. But both of them have said, if it wasn't for Trump, you wouldn't even have a NATO, because we were paying the cost of almost all of the countries. And now they're paying. I said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to continue. You heard us on trade. You do bad things on trade, and then on top of it, we're supposed to pay for your military. And because of what I did, hundreds of billions of dollars flowed into NATO by countries that just weren't paying. They were delinquent. They weren't paying their bills. So NATO is solid. They're strong, but they have to treat us fairly.
Are you going to give up the...
Because look, without us, NATO's not the same thing. And I can tell you, I've been having very good discussions, as you know, with President Zelensky and with President Putin. And President Putin will tell you that without the United States, he wouldn't be worried. But he is worried when the United States is involved. And I have to tell you, I've dealt very well with both gentlemen, and we have, I think we have the confines of a deal. I hope we have the confines of a deal. I'm doing it for two reasons. Number one, and by far most importantly, thousands of young people, and they're not American people, they're Russian and they're Ukrainian, are being killed every week, thousands a week. And also the United States has paid, because of Biden, $350 billion on a war that should have never happened. If we had a competent president in this, sitting right here, that war would have never happened. It would have absolutely never happened with me. And it didn't happen. For 4 years, it didn't happen.
Mr. President, do you think you have the authority, the power to round up people, deport them, and then you're under no obligation to a court to show the evidence against them?
Well, that's what the law says, and that's what our country needs, because we were, unfortunately, they allowed millions of people to come into our country, totally unvetted, totally unchecked. So you ought to ask, did he have the authority to allow millions of people? Did Biden have the authority to do something that's unthinkable? Have open borders where millions of people poured into our country, totally unvetted and totally unchecked, just as you would say. And many of those people were criminals. Many of them were from jails and prisons and mental institutions and gang members and drug dealers and very dangerous people. Many were murderers. We have 11,088 that we know of murderers they murdered. Of that number, at least half killed more than one person. They're in our country. They're in a location near you. Biden allowed that to happen to our country. And there's people that really ran the country. And the person that operated the auto pen, I think we ought to find out who that was, because I guess that was the real president. So when you ask me if we have the authority, did Biden have the authority to allow millions of people to come into our country? Many of these people, hardened criminals at the top of the line, who have caused tremendous damage in our country. You see them in New York City fighting with our police. I mean, literally having fist fights in the street with our police. These are tough, hard criminals. Many of them came out of jails, and not just South America, from all over the world. They came out from Africa, from the Congo. They came out from Asia. Not just South America, but many from South America. These are hard, tough criminals, and we have to get them out. And a judge sitting behind a bench someplace got a nice appointment. You can't take that away from the people that are responsible. Now, in this case, Marco Rubio has a lot of big decisions to make, and he's a fantastic person, a great man. I think he'll be our best. I think he has a chance to be our best Secretary of State. He's been doing incredibly. He works so hard. He's gone to so many different countries already, and he's got the authority to get bad people out of our country. And you can't stop that with a judge sitting behind a bench that has no idea what goes on, who happens to be a radical left lunatic.
Do you think the judiciary...
You guys today are denying this New York Times report that Elon Musk was going to be shown a 20 to 30 page presentation about a theoretical war plan against China. Why not just show it to Elon?
Because I don't want to show it to anybody. You know, you're talking about a potential war with China. Now, I deal with these people all the time, and I'm dealing with Pete, I'm dealing with these gentlemen on numerous different airplane purchases, and I think they're all going to be great. But I don't want other people seeing, anybody seeing potential war with China. We don't want to have a potential war with China, but I can tell you if we did, we're very well equipped to handle it. But I don't want to show that to anybody, but certainly you wouldn't show it to a businessman who is helping us so much. He's a great patriot. He's paying a big price for helping us cut costs, and he's doing a great job. He's finding tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. But I certainly wouldn't want, you know, Elon has businesses in China, and he would be susceptible perhaps to that. But it was such a fake story. The New York Times is just as fake as CNN and MSDNC. And anybody read that story, people laughed at that story. Who would do such a thing? And the first thing I did is I called Susie and I called Pete. I said, is there any truth to that? And they said, it's ridiculous. No, he's over there to talk about costs. You might want to address that, Pete. But Elon was over there today to address costs. Doge, thing called Doge, which you've heard about. Pete?
That's exactly right, Mr. President. You pointed out it was a fake story. We pointed out it was meant to sort of undermine whatever relationship the Pentagon has with Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a patriot. Elon Musk is an innovator. Elon Musk provides a lot of capabilities our government and our military rely on, and I'm grateful for that. We welcomed him today to the Pentagon to talk about Doge, to talk about efficiencies, to talk about innovations. It was a great informal conversation. The rest of that reporting was fake. There was no war plans, there was no Chinese war plans, there was no secret plans. That's not what we were doing at the Pentagon.
I might add that I think Elon, if they ever wanted to do that, I think Elon wouldn't do it. I think he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't want to put himself in that position. But if you read what's out of the New York Times, it's such a dishonest newspaper. It's such garbage. It's, you know, it used to be called all the news that's fit to print. Well, it's all the news that's not fit to print. They have fake sources, or they don't have sources. I think they make most of it up. But this was a made-up story by the New York Times. I call it the failing. It's a failing newspaper. It's failing. And they shouldn't do that. They really are the enemy of the people.
And something else,
We do need honest journalism in this. You know, we've made such big strides over the last 2 months, but we just need honest journalism, and we don't have it. When you have a CNN, you have to watch these people every once in a while just to see where they're coming from, and it's so dishonest. MSNBC is, I think, probably worse, and they're both doing horribly in the ratings. I think they're going to be turned off. I don't think, they're not doing any ratings. You're doing well in the ratings.
Thank you.
I understand that your trade rep is meeting their Chinese counterpart next week.
Yes.
Is there anything that they can do to stop April 2nd or to roll back the tariffs that you put on China already?
Well, we can talk, but basically, I call April 2nd. I would have made it April 1st, but I didn't want to be April Fool's Day because then nobody would believe what I said, and they do believe me. April 2nd is going to be Liberation Day for America. We've been ripped off by every country in the world, friend and foe. We've been ripped off on trade. We've been ripped off on military. We protect people and they don't do anything for us. It's just so unfair for years and years. And now some of that money is going to be coming back to us in the form of tariffs. I mean, tens of billions. It's going to be numbers like nobody's ever seen. So NVIDIA announced today, you saw that? Hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. The biggest chip maker in the world announced hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. Hundreds of billions, not millions, but billions. They're all coming here. Apple just announced $500 billion worth. They're going to build plants here. You know, they built their plants in China. They're going to build them here. And they're starting immediately. We have investment, the likes of which this country has never seen, already announced. And they all want to have news conferences. I don't have enough time to have that many news conferences, but I would say so far at least $4 trillion. $4 trillion is coming in. Car companies, very importantly, a lot of the car companies that were going to build in Mexico or Canada are now building here. Because I don't want cars from Canada. I don't want cars from Mexico. They want to do it, it's fine, but I want the car companies to build here, not, they were building in Mexico 3 plants, big plants, really big plants, and they were gonna sell the cars right across the border. We wouldn't have the jobs, we wouldn't have the profits, we wouldn't get the taxes, we get nothing. All we get is unemployment and empty factories. Those days are over. So now those 3 places are gonna build here, but many more than that. We have a big one. Honda is building, just announced a really big plant in Indiana, great state, smart place to build. And we have many car companies coming here. The steel mills are going to be booming, And many other things, many other things come with that. But we need that for defense. There are certain things you have to have. You have to have steel. We would have had, if I didn't do in my first term tariffs to stop the onslaught, because they were dumping steel in order to destroy our steel plants. If I didn't do 50% and even 100% in certain cases tariffs on steel, you wouldn't have a steel plant in the United States. And Biden was unable to get rid of those tariffs because they threw off so much money that his numbers, which didn't work anyway, because his numbers were terrible, what he did, the way he spent money was so horrible, and what he allowed to happen to energy. That's the other thing. Energy is going to be like it's never been before. Mr. Vice President is here. Do you have anything to say while you're here? You're a very good Vice President.
I'm just here to watch the show, sir.
Okay.
I think airplanes are pretty cool, so I wanted to check this out.
It is cool.
Mr. President, to take off the trade war at this point, though.
Well, I'll be speaking to President Xi. I have a great relationship with him. We're going to have a very good relationship. But we have a $1 trillion deficit because of Biden with President Xi. More than that. I mean, I've heard $1.2 trillion. We have a deficit. And I've explained that to President Xi. We also have a problem where he's allowing fentanyl to be sent into Mexico and then cross the border and, killing. I think the number is much higher than the 125, 115 that I think it's closer to 300,000 people a year. And so that's a problem. But they have a tremendous surplus against the United States, so we don't want that.
Mr. President, a number of industries have come to you asking for exemptions on tariffs. Is that something that is under consideration by you?
Well, people are coming to me and talking about tariffs, and a lot of people are asking me if they could have exceptions. And once you do that for one, you have to do that for all. So, I mean, generally, I did something interestingly during 2 weeks ago. I gave the American car companies a break because it would have been unfair if I didn't. And everybody said, oh, he changed his mind on tariffs. I didn't change my mind. I helped our, sort of big 3, big 4. I helped some of the American companies. And instead of taking it properly, they said, oh, he changed it. I don't change, but the word flexibility is an important word. Sometimes there's flexibility, so there'll be flexibility, but basically it's reciprocal, so that if China's charging us 50% or 30% or 20%, and I don't mean China, I mean anybody, any country, Canada. Nobody knows that Canada's charging our dairy farmers. They have 270% tariffs. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. They have up to 400%. They have a couple of tariffs at 400%. Nobody knows that. Nobody talks about that. And remember, with Canada, we don't need their cars, we don't need their lumber, we don't need their energy, we don't need anything from Canada, and yet it costs us $200 billion a year in subsidy to keep Canada afloat. So when I say they should be a state, I mean that. I really mean that. Because